I'm Ashton Addison from EventChain for InvestmentPitch Media and the Crypto Coin Show. And today on Blockchain Interviews, we have John Gleeson, the COO of Storj. John, welcome to the show, and thanks for taking the time to be here.
Hey, thanks for inviting me. This is a great venue, and got a lot of great news to share.
Yeah, I'm really excited to dive into all of the recent news that Storj has just come out with. And I would love for you to kick it off for the viewers that aren't familiar with the details of Storj with a high-level overview of what is Storj doing in the blockchain space and what are the solutions that your team is providing.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are a cloud object storage service for developers. And what we do is we make open source software that anybody can run. Data centers, prosumers, businesses, and those businesses have many times extra hard drive capacity in their data centers. If they run our software, they can share that extra capacity with us. We aggregate it, and then we make it available to developers as an S3 compatible storage service. So it's sort of your alternative to Amazon.com in the decentralized space. And today our storage capacity is sourced from over 11,000 different independent people all around the world running our software. And so that it's a great sort of story for decentralization because we're able to provide a great competitive service on a huge number of different nodes in, I think, 96 different countries now.
Wow, very cool, John. And when I first looked at Storj platform, I saw decentralized cloud storage, and as a consumer, my mind goes to consumer storage, but that's not the route that Storj has chosen. You're choosing more cloud storage for developers, which obviously in the blockchain space is highly needed right now. But can you talk about why is that you're not focused on consumer data storage and developers is what's needed?
Yeah, absolutely. So in sort of the world today, if we're competing against the Dropboxes and the boxes and that sort of thing and trying to reach consumers, it's a lot larger number of people that we have to hit and market to, and a lot of different sort of things that we have to build to be competitive that maybe aren't core to what we're offering. But by targeting developers, we're getting to that same customer base just indirectly, right? So by providing a great service that's 80% cheaper and allows developers to build more private and more secure applications, we can target those developers, we can get into those applications, and we can reach all of those end users ultimately without having to really do that part of the work, which is trying to break through in the consumer space and also really deal with the support issues that you get with the consumers, password reset and all that stuff. So developers are really a great target for us, and so far so good. It's working out great.
That's great to hear, and yeah, that does sound like the right route now that you have explained it. And I know Storj in the last week or so has had some huge announcements, big changes. Can you give us some insight into the announcements that your team has just made?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've gotten some really great traction over the last year with the service, and we've got a ton of feedback from developers, basically that they love the idea, right? They love the distributed storage, the security, and the privacy, but what they wanted was they wanted to interact with us the way they do with every other cloud storage provider. And what that means is introducing an S3 compatible gateway. And it's a really big challenge to do when your storage is spread over 11,000 different storage nodes. But we spent the last really 8 months or so working on that. And at the same time, we got some feedback that some of the brand decisions that we had made were confusing to the developers as well. And so what we did was we launched a new brand. So we're launching under Storj DCS, Decentralized Cloud Storage. We're offering that gateway service. Along with the gateway service, we've introduced multi-region high availability for every single component of the network. We've launched new pricing. So now we are the lowest cost provider for any storage provider on the market today at $4 a terabyte for storage and $7 a terabyte for egress bandwidth. And we've introduced a free tier, 150 gigs of storage and bandwidth for developers so that they can try it, get started with passion projects or whatever, and then grow into that with larger projects as they move forward. And so it's just sort of that total package of new brand, new product, new pricing, and free tier. So it's a lot, and the reception has been excellent.
That's great to hear. And yeah, I was curious about the pricing, and when I think of decentralized storage, and I think at the Ethereum blockchain, just storage and transaction costs, it seems like it's not cheap compared to potentially a centralized solution. At least that's what I'm thinking in my head. But I'm guessing that your team has found a way to make it cheaper than these high transaction fees on Ethereum. How is there a trade-off between the costs in the decentralized ecosystem versus the Amazon way?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, the traditional way to go about delivering cloud storage is you build a building, right? The data center, you fill it full of racks and people, and you park a bunch of internet pipes into it, and you sell your cloud storage, and you rinse, lather, repeat. And the number of people that can actually do something like that is terribly few, right? I mean, you have to be at absolutely hyperscale to be able to even enter that market. And so decentralized cloud storage lets you enter that fray, but in a completely different way. Instead of a ton of CapEx up front, you can do it with OpEx. And so what we've done is essentially crowdsource that same storage. So instead of building data centers, we've tapped into the latent storage all around the world. And so that's our advantage. So we don't have that upfront cost, and we don't have that ongoing maintenance cost of those things. We're able to pass that 80% savings on to our customers. And at the same time, we're also able to make it really economically rewarding and viable for the people who bring storage nodes. So about 60 cents of every dollar that we take in goes back out to the network. So it is really an interesting way to approach it. We think of like the Airbnb for hard drives, and it's subverting that model the way it's always been done, but yet delivering that same service with an enterprise SLA, high availability at a cost point that can't be touched.
Definitely. And yeah, when you remove that overhead and decentralize it, there's obviously a lot less cost there. And you mentioned one of the advantages in the beginning for the developers is more privacy, more security. Can you talk about what's the difference in using storage and why it's more secure?
Yeah, so decentralization has a lot of sort of advantages from an architectural perspective when it comes to cloud storage. And some of those are actually the byproduct of just what you have to build to have a decentralized platform at all. So when you're running a bunch of your architecture on the hardware that belongs to people you don't know, you have to have things in place like strong encryption, and you have to have redundancy built in for erasure coding. And these sort of things that are foundational to being able to encrypt data client side, end-to-end encrypt it, and the metadata, break it up into tiny pieces, store it across a bunch of storage nodes, and be impervious to the fact that you could lose a bunch of storage nodes and still maintain the high availability of the data. That's fundamental to our network, but then we can turn that around and expose that as features to developers. And a couple of those things are really great. With the end-to-end encryption, where we never have the encryption keys, we don't want the encryption keys, we don't want to know what's stored on our platform. That end-to-end encryption gives developers one key to making more secure and private applications. The second one is we delegate authorization out to the edge. And what that means is developers can create applications for file sharing where no storage component knows any usernames or users of the application at all. All we know is that a request has come in and it's either valid or invalid. We don't know what the data is. We don't know who the person is. And all of that granular level of access can be done through the application, through the client application by developers, and the tools to do it are super easy. And so that's kind of the key there is being able to handle all of that access management without any risk of creating leaky buckets or thinking that there is a creepy storage company that is out there mining any of that data, right? It is because of the fundamental architecture of the decentralized applications, it's impossible for us to get at that data. And then we turn that around and expose it as feature set to the developers.
Very cool. And yeah, there's been controversy about storing, cloud storage in a centralized way is really just storing your files on somebody else's computer. And if they have access to it, then you're really giving them your files. So yeah, that's been a major topic of discussion. So it's really interesting to hear about the security functions and the privacy. And I'm sure the developers are much more aware of that than the consumers, and they probably like that function over the traditional services. So that's great to hear.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, a lot of that feedback has been, it just like you were saying, it goes back from the consumers of those applications to the developers and then back to us. And not only have we had to build those feature set, but we've also taken more of a privacy-oriented posture. And so we've ripped all the third-party trackers out of our system and all of that good stuff, and really tried to take this privacy-first approach, from company culture to marketing initiatives, all the way through to the products and features that we expose to developers.
That's great. And are the developers that are using the service all running their own validator nodes? And because you mentioned there was like 11,000 plus nodes, is there other people that are just running nodes but not using the service? And is it really easy for anybody to just start running a validator?
So it's interesting. So what we did was we made a design decision early on that was really driven by the audience of the people that are using the platform. And with most decentralized projects, you have a single node that's handling all of the functions, and you run a node if you want to participate in the network. And what we found was that most users fell into one of two categories. They either had hard drive space that they wanted to share with us, or they needed to store data for an application. But the overwhelming majority of people did not have both needs. And so we actually split out the peer classes into three different groups. One that handles sort of the metadata and the intermediation and figuring out what storage nodes data goes on and storing the metadata for the different objects that are stored in the platform. And then you have just a thing called a storage node. And if you have hard drive space and extra bandwidth, you can run a storage node, and that's all you do. You set it, you forget it, and it stores and lets people retrieve data. And then we have a developer client that takes the form of a S3 compatible gateway, developer library, and a command line interface, and also a bunch of tools that have kind of plugged into it, like FileZilla and rclone, that let you upload and download data. And so if all you need to do is store data, it acts like any other developer tool, right? If you've got a tool that's compatible with Amazon's S3, it'll work with storage, generate credentials, and away you go. And so by breaking the network up like this, it really makes it easier for developers to just get started, because they don't need to run anything. They don't need to do anything. They just need to treat it just like every other thing out there. And that's part of the sort of the combination of the architecture decisions we've made and understanding of the audience that we've got. And so the feedback has consistently been just look like those other services out there, but be better. And that's the approach we've taken.
Yeah, and I think that's a great approach, John. And I could totally understand how developers, they have a mission with their data, and it's almost like if you wanted to force everybody who wanted to use Ether to run a full node when they just wanted to make a transaction, right? But there are people that want to run nodes and have incentives to do that, and they might make a few transactions, but the majority of the people that are using the service aren't necessarily going to be running those validator nodes. So there are obviously a lot of people that are already running validator nodes for storage, which is great. And I'm guessing that ties in with the storage token. Can you talk a little bit about the storage token, how it's used within the ecosystem?
Yeah, absolutely. So the storage token is a utility token, and it's really there to facilitate transfers of value related to storing and retrieving of data. And so, again, to make this as easy as possible to developers can make a choice to choose either to pay with a credit card or to pay with storage token. There's an incentive for them to choose storage token to pay with. And then at the same time, what we do is we actually pay the storage nodes with storage token, and storage is available on a couple dozen different exchanges. So it's really easy to convert storage token into something else if you don't want to store data, or just use it to store data on the platform. And we've really seen a lot of advantages in terms of using the storage token, because we have, 12,000 of these things in 96 different countries. Some of them are making, just a couple of dollars a month when they first join the network. Others are making $1,000 a month. And the key thing here is that we can do all of that payment through the storage token. We're doing that with a standard payment processor would almost eliminate a lot of the value. Now we've seen, the impact of the increase in ETH fees lately, and that in some cases that's been a little painful. I will fully admit that. But some of the things that we are doing are working with companies like Matter Labs, ZK Sync to do an L2 payout solution, and that is turning out to be a really excellent alternative, and it helps put the power of the transaction processing in the hands of the storage nodes. It allows us to do more efficient payment terms. But yeah, it's a fantastic way to sort of bootstrap the network and handle all of that payment processing. And it's great to see the Ethereum network sort of moving along and to take a leadership position with some of those L2 solutions to really streamline the cost that's associated with those payments.
Yeah, it's definitely great to hear that you're taking advantage of that as well. And it seems so many different platforms are needing to use L2 on Ethereum. And we'll see how Ethereum grows over this year. Hopefully, some of these improvements will help with that. But at least there's a lot of adoption. It sounds like you guys have a lot of people in your network that are utilizing it, and that's great success towards widespread adoption. And with all of these updates that your team has just put out recently, and the rebranding and listening to your developers, I'm guessing you're just going to continue on with listening to your community. That's obviously important. But what would you say is going to be one of the key factors to the widespread success of Storj for years to come?
Yeah, I'll tell you, there are a few things that are going to really drive the needle for us. Probably the biggest thing is going to be channel partners, right? So finding ways to help, find applications that have end users and scale very broadly, and really establishing traction within the channel partners. The free tier is another thing that's really critical to our growth, because it gets people to sort of look at it and go, I don't know what decentralized cloud storage is. It sounds intriguing, but I just want to really try it before I get too far invested. And so it's that gateway to let people try it. And then, of course, driving forward with, some of the incentives that we can use for using storage token to buy storage and really make it even more economical for end users. But yeah, we're so far so good. Knock on wood, we're seeing a lot of great traction and a huge burst already with the new features and the new branding and pricing model.
Mm-hmm. That's great, John. And for people that are interested in learning about the validator system or trying out the free tier and just other developers that want to learn more information, what's the best way for them to get involved in the storage community and to get started?
Yeah, so they can check us out at storj.io at our website. They can join our community at forum.storj.io. And our documentation, docs.storj.io, is also a great place to start. And of course, you can just go to the website, sign up for a free account, and get immediate access. And we've got really great docs in terms of getting started and using the platform, and a lot of good case studies coming out right now in terms of companies like Plask, FileZilla, and Filebase that are doing really good work integrated with the platform and taking advantage of centralized storage already.
Great. Well, I will leave those links in the description box below as well for the viewers. Thank you so much for taking the time, John, today to speak about storage. All the best with the platform moving forward, and let's follow up in the near future.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Appreciate the time, and have a great afternoon.